4 orbital maneuvering and attitude control thrusters on Starliner's service module are now firing, slowing Starliner down as the capsule begins its journey back to Earth. This will take about 59 seconds to complete. We're hearing all thrusters firing well so far. You can see here those representation of those thrusters firing. Starliner is maintaining its attitude, and as those large orbital maneuvering thrusters are firing, smaller reaction control system thrusters are also working, keeping the spacecraft in the correct position for the burn. Still looking good. And we did see the deorbit burn cut off successfully. Teams here on the ground reporting a good burn. Starliner is now on its way to White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico, and a planned touchdown at about 11 p.m. Central, midnight Eastern Time. Next up on the to-do list for tonight is the separation of the service module. With the service module's job done, it'll be disposed of over the Pacific Ocean, leaving the uncrewed crew module to carry on alone. In addition to all its other jobs, the service module has spent the flight protecting the crew module's heat shield. Jettisoning it uncovers that critical piece of equipment, allowing it to shelter the spacecraft as it begins traveling back through the Earth's atmosphere.
The crew module will then make its final attitude adjustments to make sure the heat shield is at exactly the right angle to provide that protection. And those fine-tuned adjustments are really just a strong capability of Starliner's guidance, navigation, and control system. In fact, on the 2 previous flights, Starliner made bullseye landings thanks to that system.
Starliner's maneuvering into position for that jettison at this time. Team here on the ground reporting that Starliner is in a good attitude, pointing the right direction for the service module separation.
And the service module has just jettisoned, separated, and is now falling away. It will burn up during reentry over a remote part of the Pacific Ocean. And Starliner will continue on its path to New Mexico, where the landing and recovery team is waiting for touchdown. Starliner is now angling itself and its heat shield for reentry. The entry interface is coming up in just about 10 minutes. That's the hottest part of the reentry process, with Starliner's heat shield reaching about 3,000 degrees. To protect Starliner from those heat loads, the spacecraft has what's called an ablative heat shield. The outer surface of that shield heats up to a gas, which then carries the heat away from the crew module through convection. And our team calls this process a game of threes because during entry interface, the heat shield will handle those temperatures of about 3,000 degrees, but it will convert that heat to about 300 degrees with only 3 inches of ablator. And because of this protection during this hottest part of reentry, the inside of the spacecraft remains at about room temperature. When Starliner returned from its last 2 flights, the capsules landed with 2 black stripes up the sides, indicating the heat shield was ablated as intended. So we do expect to see that again today, and the team considers that a bit of a badge of honor.
Once again, we did see Starliner deorbit or performance deorbit burn on time at 10:17 p.m. Central Time, and then quickly turned around and jettisoned its surface module now that it has performed its duty over the course of the mission. We are still about 20 minutes away from entry interface, but things will start to happen quickly after that. About 4 minutes after we go into the entry interface, the heat from Starliner's re-entry will become so intense that the plasma will begin to form around the spacecraft, causing a blackout in communications with Starliner for about 4.5 minutes. And after that, we'll see Starliner jettison its forward heat shield that's been protecting the parachutes during re-entry. Then, when Starliner is around 30,000 feet above the ground, the spacecraft's parachute sequence will begin. Two drogue parachutes will start slowing Starliner down, and then they'll detach, and 3 main parachutes will deploy and inflate. At about 3,000 feet off the ground, the base heat shield jettisons, exposing the airbags, and then at touchdown, those airbags absorb the initial force of landing, cushioning the spacecraft for a soft, safe return to Earth. Currently, Starliner is about 213 miles above the South Pacific Ocean. It's just past the southernmost portion of this final orbit, coming around the southern coast of Australia, and now it's going to begin making its way northward towards the west coast of the United States for that landing at 11 p.m. Central Time, midnight Eastern Time at White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico. Again, we've had the deorbit burn that took place just as planned at 10:17, a 59-second burn that changed the Starliner speed by about 290 miles per hour, 130 meters per second. That made way for the service module separation, and the next milestone we'll be watching for is an entry interface coming up around 10:45. Still about 10 minutes away. Live view here of the recovery forces staged near the landing site, ready to move in once Starliner touches down. We are taking off milestones as expected for that 11 p.m. Central, midnight Eastern, or 10 p.m. Mountain Time touchdown today in New Mexico.
Again, Starliner performed its deorbit burn about 12 minutes ago. The thrusters performed nominally, and the flight home is going smooth.
We're still about 14 minutes away from the entry interface, which is our next milestone. I think I said earlier that we were 10 minutes away. That was a mistake. But about 14 minutes from now, we'll be experiencing the atmosphere for the first time since Starliner launched. And since we do have a little time, we're going to check back in with the landing team. Leah and Josh, how are things going out there?
Thanks, Brandy. Yeah, that was a great view of the landing convoy all lined up. I was just watching some of the Gold team members getting suited up. As you mentioned earlier, that's going to be the first team to come in and inspect the vehicle. They're sniffing for those hypergalls or any of those dangerous fumes before the rest of the teams get the go to move in and approach the capsule. Of course, it's kind of a waiting game right now as we are still waiting to spot Starliner coming from the southwest. So a lot of us are outside of the convoy right now and keeping our eyes on the skies.
Yeah, that's right. We've got about just under probably 3 dozen vehicles all lined up in 3 rows, just waiting to get that touchdown signal. Again, going through that convoy list that you guys went through already so well. Behind that Gold team, after Starliner is declared safe, the Silver team moves in and they do the electrical grounding. They'll also stabilize the vehicle just in case the airbags start deflating. We make sure that the hatch has a good stable orientation for Red team to come in, and they're the ones with the hatch orientation. And once the Red team establishes hatch access, actually the Silver team has a fun job tonight in the dark. They're going to go start looking for the pieces that came off of Starliner, those heat shields, some of those lids from those parachute mortars. And then after that, after Red team has hatch access and opens up the hatch, NASA's ISS program folks are going to come in for the cargo inspection.
So again, we are expecting to start seeing Starliner coming across the horizon around the time that entry interface begins. But until then, just wanted to give you guys a hit from the landing site and the latest that we have going on here. So we'll toss it back over to you in Mission Control, Houston.
Thanks so much, Leah and Josh. We are watching for that entry interface as well. We're now about 12 minutes away. Starliner continuing to make good progress following in that 10:17 p.m. Central Time deorbit burn.
Again, we're looking at the landing and recovery team set up at the holding zone there at White Sands. Josh and Leah are embedded with that convoy, and they will make a very strategic move toward the spacecraft after touchdown, first stopping at about the 500-foot mark, and then they'll get the go to move forward to the 150-foot mark, and then once the vehicle is considered safe, they will move in.
With the deorbit burn complete and the service module separated, the spacecraft's heat shield is now exposed and ready to begin experiencing the atmosphere again. The Starliner is going to make some final attitude adjustments that keep that heat shield pointing at exactly the right angle.
And next up after that is entry interface, again, just coming up in a few minutes. At 400,000 feet above Earth, Starliner faces temperatures of 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit from the plasma created by air friction around the spacecraft. But Starliner can handle that heat with its heat shield, which is made of an ablative material designed to keep the inside of the spacecraft at about 70 degrees.
A few minutes later, Starliner will experience an expected blackout in communications, and that will last for about 4.5 minutes. At 30,000 feet and just 11 minutes before landing, Starliner jettisons its forward heat shield, exposing the spacecraft's parachute system. Then 2 drogue chutes will deploy, increasing drag and significantly slowing down Starliner. Then 3 pilot parachutes will pull out the main chutes, allowing the spacecraft to continue its slow and steady descent for another 8,000 feet towards the landing zone.
And once the main parachutes are fully inflated, Starliner's bucket handle releases. And what that does is it just basically levels out the spacecraft ahead of touchdown. And then the base heat shield that protected Starliner through reentry will separate at about 3,000 feet, uncovering the landing airbags. Those airbags, of course, will fill with nitrogen, allowing for Starliner to land softly and safely there in the sand.
Less than 10 minutes to go now before we do get to that entry interface point, and now just 24.5 minutes away from the landing at White Sands Space Harbor. Everything's pretty quiet in the room, which is a good sign. Things are continuing to go smoothly as Starliner begins making its way back to Earth.
You're taking a look there at Flight Directors Rick Henfling on the left, speaking with Mike Lammers on the right. Rick is the flight director for this landing operation. Mike is weather flight director. They are tag teaming this operation.
Team has been keeping a close eye on weather at the landing site, but everything looks pretty good for tonight's touchdown.
Yeah, about 79 degrees Fahrenheit out there. They reported 10 miles of visibility. The winds are within the limits, so we are looking good for a touchdown. Coming up right about 11 o'clock p.m. Central Time.
7 minutes to go now in tool entry interface, and then that intense heating will start about 2 minutes after we do begin the interface. That'll last about 4.5 minutes, during which time we'll be in a blackout. Starliner is currently about 130 miles, 149 miles rather, above the Pacific Ocean, heading northward towards the western coast of the United States, and it's touchdown in New Mexico.
We're taking a look here at the landing trajectory. There on the left of your screen, you can see that line that crosses over the Baja Peninsula, and that is the track Starliner will take as it makes its way into New Mexico. As it gets closer to the ground, people living in the area might get a bright shot of Starliner coming back through the atmosphere and landing there in White Sands, New Mexico.
You can also see there in the center of the screen the to-do list, basically, before we do get to landing. The service module separations highlighted in green because that one's already taken place. And next up is the entry interface, about 5 minutes away from now.
And flight controllers here in the room are reporting good attitude for that entry interface, coming up again in just under 5 minutes.
Two and a half minutes left before Starliner begins to feel the effects of the Earth's atmosphere again. Everything continuing to go smoothly. Flight controllers here in the room are quiet as they're working through their steps, but all going well so far. Starliner is in position to begin experiencing that heat from re-entry, now less than 100 miles above the Earth and heading towards the Baja Peninsula. We'll be flying over that before landing in New Mexico. Just 17 minutes to go until landing. Less than a minute now until we begin entry interface. Again, about 2 minutes after entry interface starts, we'll begin seeing the heating really get intense, and we'll go into a 4.5 minute blackout. Team here in the ground reporting entry interface has begun. They're seeing good range. Seeing another view from the landing site, or the teams getting ready to move out to the landing site here. A little better idea from this view of exactly how dark it is out there with all the lights of the vehicles shining. A minute and a half until we move into the blackout period for Starliner. And 14.5 minutes until we land in White Sands, New Mexico.
The Starliner enters Earth's atmosphere at 17 times the speed of sound, which could create a sonic boom for folks living in the area. It will then be slowed down by parachutes to a speed very similar to what you might experience while going down an elevator inside a high-rise building. The vehicle then comes to a safe, comfortable stop at landing.
.30 seconds now until the blackout period begin. Due to the compression of friction and friction of the air, the molecules generate a very hot plasma that causes the red-orange glow you often see appear in post-flight imagery on many spacecraft. Although we won't get to see that tonight, it will happen. It causes an expected communication dropout. This one will last 4.5 minutes as the vehicle goes through a time when the plasma interferes with the satellite signal. We expect that blackout to end around 10:52 p.m. Central.
Well, this is also the time that I mentioned earlier where a Starliner in the past 2 flights has gotten that black mark along the sides of it, and that just really proves to our team that the ablative heat shield, or the ablative material around Starliner is doing its job, and the heat shield is pushing that plasma away.
This blackout time again lasts about 4.5 minutes. We've got about 3.5 left of it. After that, the milestones we'll be watching for include forward heat shield jettison at 10:56, when Starliner is about 4.3 miles above the Earth. Very soon after that, almost immediately, drogue chutes deploy. Those give a little bit of an initial slowdown to the vehicle before the really large main parachutes deploy. That happens when the Starliner is about 2.5 miles above the Earth. This is a live view from the International Space Station, where we're able to get a view of Starliner's track as it comes in. We are now less than 10 minutes away from landing at the White Sands Space Harbor, scheduled for 11 p.m. Central. Also getting reports that the WB-57 is also able to see Starliner now as it begins coming in for its landing. We've still got just about a minute left to go before Starliner comes out of its blackout period. And this is a view from the WB-57, one of NASA's aircraft that is at the landing site, has been staged and ready to pick Starliner, or pick up the view of Starliner as it comes in, and that is what we are seeing now.
And they're filming this video from about 16,000 feet.
The WB-57 should continue to give us a view until the drogue parachutes deploy, and then we hope to pick it up with the Cessna that is also in the area.
And flight controllers here in the room are reporting that we are out of that blackout period and everything is looking good. Starliner remaining nominal as she returns to Earth.
Again, this is a view from the WB-57.
Starliner showing a beautiful streak across the sky as she returns to White Sands, New Mexico. We're about 3 minutes away from the forward heat shield jettisoning. That's the next milestone we're looking for.
Starliner is currently about 27 miles above the Earth, and the team at White Sands reporting that they have seen it. We got a tally hole from them reported remotely.
That means they are seeing Starliner from the ground there in New Mexico.
This view is coming from the Cessna that's also in the area, picking up Starliner now from its lower altitude, about 6,000 feet above, whereas the WB-57 is about 16,000 feet up. We are now just 6 minutes and 22 seconds away from landing. We should also just be a couple minutes away from the forward heat shield jettison, which will bring on the drogue parachute deploy, followed by the main parachutes.
And the strobe lights on Starliner are now on. Starliner is now over the landing site, and that strobe light will help the teams actually track Starliner on the ground because it is very dark out there.
Now about 12 miles above the landing site and just 5 minutes away from landing. Watching now for the forward heat shield jettison. That should be coming up, again making way for the parachute deployment.
All right, and that action you're seeing on your screen, forward heat shield and drogues out.
Really interesting view of this coming down from the WB-57. See those two drogue parachutes now deployed. They slow the vehicle down initially until it gets to a safe speed for the enormous main parachutes to follow. About 4 minutes to go until touchdown. Now back to a view from the Cessna aircraft in the vicinity of the landing site. Again, this is a view from a little lower than the WB-57 we were seeing.
The next thing we're going to see here is the 3 main parachutes come out, and everything will happen pretty quickly from that point on.
After those mains are out, we'll see the bottom heat shield that has been protecting Starliner through its journey through the atmosphere come off. That makes way for the landing airbags to deploy.
And there's the main parachutes there on your screen. We see 3 out, currently reefing.
And the teams at the landing recovery teams report that they heard the booms as those came out.
3 good mains fully open there. You can see Starliner in a slight tilt, so we're going to see the rotation handle move here shortly, and it will level out Starliner. But 3 good parachutes, looking great.
Just a little over 2 minutes until the expected landing time, and we heard the rotational handle has been released, so you can see that tilt evened out. Next up is the back heat shield jettison. And there it goes. That again makes way for the airbag inflation.
Nice to see that. You can see the airbags deploying there on your screen. Those airbags are filled with nitrogen as they guide Starliner safely back to the desert floor. Just a beautiful sight as Starliner makes its way to the sands of New Mexico. And flight controllers confirming 6 good airbags.
This view still coming to us from the Cessna. We've got just about a minute left to go until the expected touchdown. I'll be watching for that time for you.
Just about 15 seconds away from expected touchdown. You're seeing the ground there in your screen as we get closer. Touchdown. Starliner is back on Earth. That landing coming at 11:01 and 35 seconds Central Time, 10:01 and 31 seconds Mountain Time at White Sands Space Harbor at the U.S. Army's Missile Range in New Mexico. Our landing and recovery teams will now wait for clearance before making their way to the spacecraft.
One of the changes required with no crew on board is that the team here in the flight control room will be the ones to command the parachute to be cut away so that the wind doesn't pull the capsule along. But that's no problem for them. So now with Starliner down, they can begin working on some of the post-landing to-do items. Again, we saw Starliner touchdown at 11:01 p.m. Central Time. That's 1 minute after midnight Eastern Time, or 10:01 p.m. Central at the landing site in New Mexico. This is a view from the Cessna, still watching the drones slowly make their own way down. Those, of course, are the drogue parachutes that preceded the main parachutes, first slowing Starliner down before the large parachutes opened.
And really just a flawless and beautiful descent of Starliner today. Even heard some cheers and clapping in the background.
This again is the drogue parachute still making their way to the ground after Starliner has touched down with its main parachutes. Touchdown came at 11:01 p.m. Central Time. The team here in Mission Control will be working through some post-landing steps now. View here of Starliner at its landing site in White Sands at Space Harbor. The landing and recovery teams will soon begin making its way out to them to begin recovering the spacecraft. The team here in Mission Control is polling right now to see if everybody is ready to power off the vehicle. That again is a step that the flight control team has taken over with the lack of crew on board.
Once the spacecraft is powered down, they will be transitioning control of the spacecraft over to the landing and recovery team. And it's a little difficult to see in this shot, but there is a strobe light on Starliner that will help the teams follow it out there.
And the recovery team is on the move, but I think Leah Cheshire and Josh Barrett, our colleagues out there, may be able to give us one last update. Leah and Josh, can you hear us?
Great landing of Calypso. I don't think there could be a
Brady,
better
hopefully.
birthday.
Obviously, we did have really a great show. We were able to see the cameras that you were watching too from the WB-57, from the Cessna, from the International Space Station. But
Leah, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
Concur. It's been a really amazing day.
We were hearing a bit from Space to Ground there, but I think they've concluded, unfortunately. We'll see if we can get a recording of that for folks listening at home. But Leah, go ahead with your update.
Yeah, sorry about that. Couldn't hear that one here. But here comes
Suni, MCCH here. Rick just wanted to offer that he's got one more hour here.
Hey, it's his birthday here.
Yeah, and that's what counts. Yeah, it was a good landing. It's pretty awesome.
You guys are the best. You are the best.
Thank you.
Suni Williams there, offering a slightly early happy birthday to Flight Director Rick Hempling. He will be celebrating his birthday on September 7th, but technically in Houston, we're still a little less than an hour away from that. They are, of course, already on September 7th at the International Space Station. But Leah, if you were still with us, we'll still take that update if you can give it to us.
Yeah, so as I was saying, we got to see the capsule and the plasma trail coming up over the mountains from the southwest. And we were all still standing outside the convoy to watch that happen. But the most unexpected part was when I could hear the main parachutes being deployed. It was very faint, just a little bit of a rumble. But that strobe light really helped us identify Starliner as it was descending, and it would reflect a little bit up onto those parachutes. So we actually had a decent view as it was coming down under those chutes. And now we are actually on the drive out, and we can see the strobe light. It's giving us a great direction as we head toward the capsule.
Yeah, that's right. We are actually making our way down the former space shuttle runway, literally driving right down the middle of it. Starliner is a little bit towards the southern end, so we see that strobe kind of in the distance there. But we will make our way to the 500-foot mark, where Gold Team will move in and begin their assessments. And then once they declare that proximity operations can begin, the recovery ops will really get underway.
And with that, I think we were going to toss it back to you, Brandy and Lauren. If you don't hear it from us again tonight, just wanted to say thanks for letting us be part of the broadcast and give you the perspective of all the hardworking ground teams, both NASA and Boeing, out here at White Sands in New Mexico. So with that, sending it back over to Mission Control Houston.
Thanks so much, Josh and Leah. It's great to see Starliner home, and I envy you the up-close view, but we appreciate your updates.
I do too. Starliner has returned safely. Well done to the entire team for completing the mission with a successful undocking, deorbit, and landing. Starliner has once again proven herself a safe ride to and from space. On behalf of the entire Boeing team, welcome home, Calypso.
And with that, we will also wrap up our coverage tonight. We would like for you to stay tuned for our 12:30 a.m. post-landing news conference. That is 12:30 a.m. Central Time, so about an hour and a half, a little less than an hour and a half from now, when we'll be giving you final thoughts on the activities of the night. But Starliner is home. Again, the landing came at 11:01 p.m. Central Time. And with that, we will sign off. Thank you so much for following along with us. This is Mission Control Houston.